Shandong Longchang Animal Health Product Company Limited is one leading grain feed additive manufacturer in China, serving more than 6,000 feed manufacturers and over 10 million farmers in husbandry industry, with solutions to reduce production costs and improve production performance. LACHANCE Group has been specialized in R&D of bioacids and other grain feed additives for more than 10 years. LACHANCE Group has one professional management team with 8 doctors, 20 master degree holders, 8 executive masters of business administration, and 20 experts with rich experience in feed formulation and husbandry technique. LACHANCE R&D Center is equipped with the most advanced testing instruments, which are used to guarantee the product quality and provide customers with lipid and mycotoxin testing services. The R&D Center has research centers for hepatobiliary and fatty acid metabolism. In July of 2014, LACHANCE obtained new feed additive certificate from Ministry of Agriculture of China. Bioacids can improve the digestion and absorption of fat effectively. LACHANCE now owns a number of invention patents for production facility, process, and testing method of bioacids. In 2011, LACHANCE invested $7 million and established the new factory with an annual production capacity of 4,000 tons of bioacids, which can be used in 50 million tons of feed and $7 million for feed manufacturers. LACHANCE launched Happiness Feed, extracted from Euphorbia omodis, to replace some antibiotics and improve antioxidant capacity of the body, which plays an important role in promoting husbandry without antibiotics. In 2018, LACHANCE launched Eucobiotics, which is a safe and green product to inhibit bacterial growth, repel parasites, and protect the health of respiratory system and intestinal tract. LACHANCE has the mission to develop the natural extracted feed actives, save production costs, and improve production performance of husbandry industry. LACHANCE products have been exported to USA, Egypt, Russia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and other countries and areas, and well received by customers from international markets. LACHANCE Group will increase the investment in scientific research and development of green, safe, and environment-friendly feed actives, and work together with customers both in China and abroad to promote the safe and healthy development of husbandry and aquaculture industry.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the second day of our webinar on strategies to cost reduction and performance increasement during Ramadan in global Muslim countries. This is LACHANCE Serve Global Tour Muslim Specials, hosted by Shandong Longchang Animal Health Products Corporation Limited. My name is Mia, and I'm your moderator for today's webinar. We are grateful that you joined us yesterday wherein you watch 4 of our speakers who presented some relevant topics in the poultry sector. I do hope that the sessions yesterday helped you in some ways, and please join us again today until the end of this webinar. First, let me remind you of the following housekeeping rules. All microphones and videos of the attendees are automatically muted. And if you have any questions to our speakers, kindly type your questions in the Q&A box, which you can find below your screen, and we will entertain them right after each presentation of the speakers. Should there be any disruption during the webinar, please be patient and try to sign in again. And throughout the event, we will have our poll questions in between the presentations, so please stay with us and make sure to answer all poll questions to receive a special gift from LACHANCE. We also do invite you to join our LACHANCE regional groups to know more about them and connect for future businesses opportunities. Just scan the QR codes flashed on your screen of the area that you are from. So now let's start our program with our first speaker. He is an associate professor of poultry nutrition at the University of Guyana. And in addition to his teaching and research, he has worked closely with the poultry industry for many years. He has long and successful career as a nutritionist and R&D manager for several feed mills in Iran. He also served as a reviewer for many international and national academic journals. Please welcome Dr. Masyar Mohiti Asli to discuss the potentials of exogenous emulsifiers to improve feed efficiency and poultry industry of Iran.
Everyone, for those who don't know me, my name is Masyar Mohiti Asli, and I'm a poultry nutritionist. Today, I'm going to talk to you about potential of exogenous emulsifiers to improve feed efficiency in poultry industry of Iran. Before I get started, let's take a look at birds' performance in the commercial poultry industry, which has been improved significantly over the last few years. Today, each laying hen produces roughly 420 eggs up to 19 weeks of age, with a feed conversion ratio of about 2. Each broiler breeder hen produces 148 chicks during the production cycle, and a modern broiler weighs over 3 kilograms at 42 days, with a feed conversion ratio of about 1.6. Global chicken meat production is predicted to grow by 24 million tons or 22.3% between 2014 and 2024. Here in this table, you can see 10 countries with the largest predicted growth of chicken meat production between 2014 and 2024. All of these countries are larger than Iran and have higher population. But as you can see, Iran is one of the great producers of chicken meat. Iran produces 2.3 million tons of poultry meat and 1 million tons of eggs per year. In both categories, Iran is in the list of top 10 world's biggest producers. So let's say chicken meat is actually a major source of protein for Iranian people. Since modern poultry need a higher amount of energy, usually we have to prepare them a good diet. And poultry nutrition is very important. So feed is the single greatest expense in poultry production. Feed costs represent almost 70% of total production cost. Ingredients are the highest cost, and processing feed add more significant cost. So we all know the energy is the first common component factor in diets for poultry such as broiler, and we are usually adding fat or oils to poultry diet to increase the energy level. During fat digestion in monogastric animals, fat and oils are enzymatically hydrolyzed to form fatty acid and monoglycerides that are water insoluble. Due to the aqueous environment of a small intestine, fatty acid need to be absorbed as a hydrophobic component by formation of micelles. Micelle formation is naturally mediated by emulsifiers such as bile acids and phospholipids. But we have some challenges for fat or oil digestion. You know, lipids are not water soluble, and triglycerides are too large to absorb. So here there are some challenges for fat or oil digestion and absorption, but there is some solution. You know, triglyceride mixed with bile acid and pancreatic secretions. Also, there is a possibility that they can be digested better by using emulsifiers or endogenous emulsifier, which helps to their digestion. So fats and oils are commercially added to poultry feed to produce high energy and nutrient-dense diets. But not all lipid sources are equally digested and utilized by animal. So here you can see factors affecting the metabolizable energy value of oils or fats. So the main factor that affect the metabolizable energy value of oils and fats is their digestibility, which is dependent on the following factors: length of the carbonic chain, number of double bonds, presence or absence of ester bond, being in the form of triglyceride or free fatty acid, which is really important, a specific arrangement of the saturated and unsaturated fatty acid on the glycerol backbone, composition of free fatty acids, composition of diet, dietary calcium level is really important. For example, hydrolysis of triglyceride leads to monoglyceride and free fatty acids. And these free fatty acids can react with other nutrients to form soluble and insoluble soaps. Insoluble soaps cause the fatty acid and the mineral which is bonded with to be unavailable to the animal. So let's say increasing calcium levels is able to reduce lipid retention in birds. Type and quantity of triglycerides supplemented in diet is also important. The other important factor is intestinal microflora. Also, as I will say, sex and age of the bird is really important, especially the age. In young chickens, the digestion and absorption of dietary fats is limited because they have a limited capacity to produce and secrete bile salts. So dietary fats would remain longer in the intestinal lumen, which can result in a complete hydrolysis of monoglycerides and diglycerides to glycerol and free fatty acids, which impairing micelle formation and fat absorption. So this is one of the main issues in chicken nutrition that many researchers have tried to address. The studies have indicated that age has an effect on metabolizable energy value of diet, and gross performance of poultry are different, and you can see there are a lot of experiments that trying to address this issue. But that's why the potential use of exogenous emulsifier in poultry feed has gained significant interest as a way to improve fat absorption by young birds. Here you can see the abstract of a recently published paper on fat digestibility of soybean oil and palm fatty acids. I have highlighted the main result, and you can see by increasing age, digestibility of saturated fatty acid improved. The authors concluded that it would be, as you can see here, it wouldn't be recommended to include this byproduct in a starter feed for broiler chicken. This is a really consistent result that you can see in many trials. So let's say we have some issue in fat digestion, especially for saturated fat and in young birds. In Iran and many other countries, the use of supplemental oils in poultry diet is almost common practice because of their high energy value. In the Middle East, soybean oil is the most common source of oil used in poultry diet formulation. But the price of soybean oil is higher than the blended oils. The main reason why we don't like to use blended oils in poultry feed is that fat composition and quality are unknown and also variable. And they mostly have a lower metabolizable energy value than soybean meal. On the other hand, acid oils, which are a byprotein, usually contain a high proportion of free fatty acids and little triglycerols. They are economically interesting alternatives which are tempting for poultry producers, especially when the poultry feed cost is high. So today, the use of these types of oil is becoming more common. When fatty acids are in free form, their absorption is much lower than when they are in the form of triglycerides. Free fatty acids require a higher amount of bile acid to incorporate it into mixed micelle than monoacylglycerols, because free fatty acids are more hydrophobic and have a higher ability to form insoluble soap with a divalent cations like calcium in aqueous media of the intestine than monoacylglycerols. Here in this graph, you can see that there is a reduction in digestibility and metabolizable energy with an increase in free fatty acid content. One of the things that distributor of blended oils containing high amount of free fatty acids tell you is their high energy value. But the fact is, they just tell you gross energy, not metabolizable energy. You can see here for acid soybean, acid oil of soybean, we have high gross energy value. But, the most important thing is metabolizable energy value. So also you can see energy value of oils and fats are lower in young chickens during the first 3 weeks of life. So here from this slide, you can find out that energy value is different for oil and for fatty acid and blended oil as well. And fat digestion is lower when they are young. So, is there any way to increase digestibility of dietary fats and oil? Actually, we can make it happen by using emulsifiers in chicken diet. Emulsifiers facilitate the formation of emulsion droplets, which lowers the surface tension, stimulates the formation of micelles, causes high levels of monoacyl glycerol in the intestine, and facilitates the nutrient transport through the membrane. So emulsifiers can be used to improve fat digestibility and energy efficiency. As a result, lower energy diets can be formulated for birds while maintaining the same performance, leading to lower feed costs and more economical and sustainable production. Many types of exogenous emulsifier are available in market, such as soybean lecithin, lysolecithin, or lysophosphatidylcholine, milk-derived casein, bile acids, glycerol polyethylene, glycol ricinoate, sodium stearoyl 2 lactylate, and different other exogenous emulsifiers. Bile acids are natural, physiological surfactants that are synthesized from cholesterol in the liver. Cholic acid and cannadeoxycholic acid are two primary bile acids which synthesized in the liver, and they are conjugated to either taurine or glycine before activate secretion via the canalicular membrane of hepatocytes. Intestinal bacteria metabolize bile salt during their enterohepatic circulation, and the major biotransformation reactions include hydrolysis of conjugated bile acid to free bile acid by bile site hydrolase, and 7-alpha dehydroxylation of cannadeoxy acid and cannadeoxycholic acid, yielding deoxycholic acid and litocholic acid respectively. Bile acids are sources of active substances that can promote the absorption of fat and fat-soluble substances and protect liver health. Bile acids play an important role in improving the action of lipase for hydrolysis of lipids into triglycerides and monoacylglycerides needed for micelle production. Feeding bile acid supplements to broiler improved lipase activity and total bile acid concentration. Also, it can improve fat and protein digestibility. But the question is how we can choose the right emulsifier between a lot of product available on the market. Here I can show you two different factors that can help us. The two relevant surfactant parameters are critical micelle concentration or CMC and hydrophilic lipophilic balance, which named HLB. These are two important factors that can help us. The HLB is a simple descriptor of a surfactant's relative hydrophobicity and is one way to classify emulsifiers and solubilizers. High HLB means a surfactant is generally water soluble. Low HLB means that surfactant is usually oil soluble. The degree of lipid or water solubility of an emulsifier is dependent on its HLB, which can range from 0 to 20. The emulsifiers with a range of 2 till 6 is suited for water in oil system, and emulsifiers with a HLB of 8 and higher is good for oil in water systems. So the HLB value of bile acids is about 19, which has very good emulsification effect than many other emulsifier products. The other factor is critical micellar concentration. Bile acids, due to their amphiphilic properties, can self-associate in water, thus forming supramolecular aggregation or micelles when their concentration is above a certain concentration, name it critical micellar concentration or CMC. Naturally occurring bile acids have CMCs in the range of 2 till 20 micromole in water, which is in accordance with their aqueous solubility at body temperature. Here you can see the effects of emulsifiers on poultry performance. As you can see, there are many studies that evaluated the effects of, major effects of emulsifier on poultry performance, weight gain, blood parameters, and the others. But let's say, even though all of them have a potential to improve weight gain and performance, there are some differences between them. We can say there are some potential benefit from emulsifiers in young broiler chicken. During the first week, post-hatch, due to inability of the immature small intestine of young broilers to utilize feed effectively, the chick anatomical development and final weight can be significantly affected. So remember, the first week represents 20% of a chick total production cycle. During day 5 and 6 post-hatch, the chick's pancreas experience a lag phase of enzyme activity for lipase, trypsin, and chymotrypsin, which decreases the ability of chicks to utilize certain nutrients like fat effectively. Also, we have a challenge with yolk sac in young birds. As you know, yolk sac is 10% of chick weight. 4 grams out of 40 grams. And the composition of yolk sac is 50% water, 25% protein, and 25% fat. As young chickens have a limited bile and lipase secretion, and therefore are not able to break down lipids effectively, emulsifiers are used to act as a catalyst to break down dietary fats and to enhance the action of lipase during the lipid hydrolysis. Also, there is some potential benefit for laying hens. Emulsifier can effectively increase the absorption of fat and fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin E, vitamin A, and especially vitamin D for laying hens. So by emulsifying, activating lipase, and carrying fatty acid, they can prevent to poor eggshell calcification. So using bile acids and the other emulsifiers can help laying hen to improve eggshell thickness. Also, there are some advantages related to reduced fatty liver syndrome, and also they can discharge mycotoxins. So this is another benefit from emulsifiers, especially bile acids. So let me wrap up like this and see what we learned in this presentation. The use of emulsifier in poultry diet can increase feed efficiency, lipids absorption, growth performance, and modify blood lipids. The use of exogenous emulsifiers in broiler diets must be considered, especially when nutrient-dense diet with supplemental fat is used to maximize growth potential in fast-growing broiler strains. Clearly, the positive effect of adding emulsifiers is indicated in poorly digestible fat than highly digestible fat. When we are using blend of oils or oils including more free fatty acid compared to a pure oil, refined oil, we have to add bile acid or emulsifier, which are really important. Emulsifier can play an important role in the poultry industry's economics by increasing the digestion efficiency of dietary oils and fats. The HLV should be used as a part of emulsifier selection, as it indicates fat and water solubility on a range from 0 to 20. Thank you very much for sticking with me to the end, And if you have any question, you can email me directly, and I usually get back to you within 1 day or 2. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ashley. And indeed, it was a very informative presentation. And some of the takeaways is that it's very important to know that these exogenous emulsifiers help in fat digestibility and feed efficiency. And also it can increase lipids absorption and growth performance. So I do hope everyone here has gained or learned some things that they can apply to their poultry businesses. So now I think it's about time to flash our first poll question. So in our poll question, you can answer in 10 seconds. So the first one is, ever heard of bad acids before? You have 10 seconds to answer. Okay, time's up. All right, so Dr. Mazyar Asli is here. So we are now opening our question to our audience. And I think we have a couple of questions here. So Dr. Asli, let me ask how to define the exogenous and endogenous emulsifier from your perspective.
Thank you for asking this question. We have something like exogenous, and it's different from endogenous regarding enzyme, regarding feed additives, and different things that we are using in poultry diet. I think exogenous means something from outside, something which is like drug, something chemical, or something not producing inside the body. But endogenous means something from inside the body, something which secrete or produce inside the body's tissue or cells. So they are different. When we are telling something is endogenous, means secreting by body and is natural or physiological.
All right. Okay. So we can now move to our second question. From the audience, he said that can the fat products be used for livestock, or have you done any trials in this field yet?
Actually, we can use different types of fat and oil in animal nutrition. When we are talking about fat means something like lipid, which is saturated. But regarding oil, we have more unsaturated fatty acid. Both of them can be applied in poultry or animal nutrition. But for poultry, especially for young chicken, they don't have a good ability to digest and emulsify the saturated fat. So their ability is limited for saturated fat digestion. So it's better to don't use high quantity of saturated fat in the poultry diet. As a rule of thumb, I can tell you that it's better to have 3-part unsaturated fat and 1-part saturated fat inside the diet. But it's totally depend on the age, sex, and physiological condition of bird.
Okay. This is from the same person who asked the questions. He said, do Iranian farmers, especially in the land, use emulsifiers such as bile acids?
Emulsifier are not new concept in poultry nutrition. Actually, I have a book named Additive in Animal Feed. In this book, you can see that in 2008, we mentioned emulsifier as a part of diet, as a feed additive that you can use in diet, and it's not a new concept in poultry nutrition. And some of farmer can use some different types of emulsifying agent in the diet, but actually, to my knowledge, it's not really common at this time in Iranian market because of the price, because of the different problem that they are experiencing, it's not really common in poultry production. But this is something essential. Today we have to consider this as a important topic, using different types of feed additives, something like emulsifiers, which are really important. Modern broiler, especially modern broiler, needs a high density diet with a lot of energy. So when we are going to provide high energy diet for especially young chicken, we are going to add oil or fat, because they are some feed ingredient with high energy content. So there is no way to increase poultry energy, metabolizable energy of poultry diet without using oil or fat. So when we are going to use fat or oil, we have problem with emulsification and digestion, especially in young chick. That's why we are going to use emulsifiers, something like bile acid, because in young chicken the turnover of bile acid is not complete, it's not good. So that's why we need something here, and they are really essential.
Okay, but have you done any trials on Peking ducks?
Yeah, actually, we have done some different trials at University of Gilan on some different, commercial emulsifiers, which are available in Iranian market. And, we find good results using that types of emulsifier. I don't want to mention the commercial name because maybe it's something like competition, but, using different types of emulsifier can give us really good results, especially for the first 2 or 3 weeks of life. They are really essential. They can help us to add more fat to the diet. And when you have a high energy diet, which is like dense diet, you can grow the chicken fast. In the north of Iran, where the University of Gilan is, we have a lower altitude from sea level. So that's why we don't have any challenge with metabolic diseases like ascites or sudden death syndrome in broiler chicken, and we can grow chicken really fast. So in this condition, I can recommend to add more fat or increase the energy value of diet, which can help us to, have a rapid growth rate, and this is very good. So emulsifier can help us in this condition, and we are going to publish some papers from our previous studies. So sooner or later, you can see the result of our studies.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Ashley. And I think that's the questions that we got for you. And if you have any more questions for him, just type it in our Q&A box below, or you can also leave your email address, and Dr. Ashley will get back to you later. Thank you so much once again for having you here today. Okay,
thank you for having me.
Yeah. So moving on to our second speaker, let me introduce a well-known animal nutritionist and feed technologist in the region, who currently holds as a technical consultant for U.S. Soybean Expert Council for 6 years. And he had been a research scientist in agriculture research and development for 42 years, conducting research in animal feed and nutrition. He is also currently holding a position and the chairman of panel expert of Indonesia Animal Health Association to provide advice on the use of feed additives in animal production. Everyone, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Budi Tanjajaha with his topic on improving broiler nutrition during high-price ingredients in Indonesia.
Gentlemen in Asia, it's my privilege for me to speak in front of you First of all, I like to give thanks to LACHANCE has been inviting me to speak in the front of you. My topic of presentation for today will be improved broiler nutrition during high price ingredient. Before we start, let me introduce myself. I'm a Budi Tanganjaya. My background, I'm a nutritionist. Has been graduated my PhD from Australia and continue my postdoctoral from University of Arkansas in US. So I have been spending more than 40 years in the poultry industry, mainly in Southeast Asia. So let's start my presentation today with the title on the improved broiler nutrition during high price ingredient. My particular interest for today will be talking about the fat, especially in early nutrition. In my presentation, I will cover to look at the ingredient market, what is changing in the market for all over the world. And next one, I'm going to talk about the precision of nutrition for the broiler. This is very important because we have to provide precise nutrient to improve the broiler performance and at the same time to reduce the cost, especially during high price of the ingredient. I also will talk on specifically on the fat digestion because fat become important for feeding broiler. And I look at, for example, how to improve the fat digestion using special feed additive. And before I make a conclusion at the end, I'm going to cover how to conduct the trial. Because to prove it whether the product is good or not, you have to conduct the trial if the published trial is not available. So this is my presentation. So let's start my first slide. This is the slide that I picked up a few days ago from CBOT. You remember that price of the feed ingredient in many parts of the world will be depending on the supply and demand. And the market price can be noticed from what we call it CBOT, Chicago Board of Trade. So this is the price of corn and soybean meal, the most important ingredient for feeding animal, especially for poultry. So look at the left-hand side, the price of corn has been dramatically increased in the beginning of March. And even during the war, when the war of Ukraine and Russia is starting, the price also increasing because the corn coming from Ukraine also become not available. On the right-hand side, not only corn, but soybean meal price, which is the protein source for feeding poultry, also increased significantly in the last few weeks. So in fact, in the morning, this morning, I received the information that from CBOT again, the corn price already $8 per bushel. So keep going very high because the demand in many parts of the world for feed ingredient, especially corn and soybean meal, increasing, while the supply sometimes become limited, especially during the war situation. Besides the two most important ingredients, we notice also the price of the oil. You know that the oil has been added to animal feed to improve the energy content. And look at the price of the soybean oil from CBOT, increased significantly also. Not only soybean oil, but also palm oil from Malaysia or Indonesia increased dramatically in the last few weeks. So with the high price of the ingredient, it's important that we have to feed the animal properly to maximize the performance or to reduce the cost of production. So how do you cope with the problem? First, I would like to mention that if we are talking about feeding the animal, feeding poultry, as nutritionists, we are not only talking about feeding ingredient, feeding corn or soybean meal, but I'm talking about the feeding nutrient because nutrient is coming from feed ingredient. So as nutritionists, we have to calculate what kind of the nutrient have to be fed to poultry. With the current situation, I noticed that among the nutrient available for animal, energy is number one, become very expensive. In this case, we call it metabolizable energy. The second nutrient for poultry will be amino acid, especially digestible amino acid. And the third one will be available phosphorus. Three important ingredients three important nutrients which is coming from ingredient if you want to reduce the cost of production. Let's talk about the precision nutrition for broiler. In order to achieve performance properly for the broiler, it is important for nutritionists to provide sufficient nutrition, sufficient nutrient to maximize the production or to reduce the cost of production. In many cases, sometimes the formulator or nutritionist may provide undernutrition. What happens if you provide animal without sufficient nutrient? The animal, of course, will not grow properly. The FCR for broiler will be higher. And so the broiler score, what I call it in Indonesia, they call it IP, which is index prestasi, broiler index, the score will be lower. So there's also, if there's undernutrition, the immunity will be compromised for the animal. The carcass quality also will be affected. So, and then also poor litter quality if it is undernutrition. However, on the other side, if you provide overnutrient, too much nutrient, for example, too much nutrient inside of the feed, what happens? The excess of the energy also causing the problem for the animal. Not necessarily we provide high energy, that animal will grow faster and faster. There are many cases also providing high protein. What happens? The protein inside of the feed will be deaminated, hydrolyzed first to become amino acid, and then deaminated inside of the body, and the excess nitrogen will be excreted to become uric acid in excreta. That's the reason why for the house, for the animal house, which is fed, the animal is fed in too high protein, sometimes the smell of ammonia can be detected in the field. So it's critical that overnutrition have to be controlled beside undernutrition. So we have to provide the precise nutrient that necessary for the growth of the animal. Not only nutrient in terms of the amino acid, but also calcium and phosphorus. Sometimes become critical, for example, for layer. So this is important for nutritionists to consider how to feed the animal properly, because the excess nutrient, this is my calculation recently, that if you extra 1% protein inside of the feed, the cost will be around $10 to the ration. You provide another 100 kilocalorie extra for the broiler feed, for example, the cost nowadays with high price of oil will be $18. So it's critical. There's a lot of money involved with providing excess nutrient. Normally, the typical for the people, for the farmer, they are feeding broiler in the 3 stages. They call it the starter, the grower, or finisher. If you look at the requirement, in fact, the requirement is not by state, like starter, grower, finisher. The requirement is like a gradual, like the graph here, which is continuously. So what happened if feeding the starter feed, for example, probably in the first 3 days, there's deficient in nutrient. However, after 3 days, probably the excess of nutrient. Similarly, during the growing period, there are certain stages that undernutrition or overnutrition. So it's critical to understand what the bird requirement. Many farmers in Indonesia, for example, they are feeding the starter feed until the end of the bird, the end of the production period. So what happens if you're feeding too much? There are a lot of excess nutrient here. There's a lot of excess nutrient. What happens with the excess nutrient will be discarded by the animal and increase cost of the production. And increase of nutrient is not really necessary to be good. Can be affecting negatively to the animals, not become positive. This is the graph that developed by Brazilian, that the growth is become continuous. And the production, the demand of nutrients is depending the production performance. Some broiler may grow faster, probably they need different animal, a different nutrient level compared to the broiler, which is lower in production. So you have to know exactly what happened with your animal before you making the feed in order to provide a precise nutrition for the animal. So what kind of the nutrient? I mentioned to you the 3 most important nutrients will be metabolizable energy, and then amino acid, and also available phosphorus. But in the formulation, the nutritionist may consider more than 30 nutrients have to be calculated. But we have to focus the 3 most expensive nutrients in order to optimize the production cost. Look at the broiler grow. I mentioned to you the grow of broiler is not step by step the starter, grower, and finisher, but it's critical that the stage of the grow demanding the different nutrient. The most critical important thing for broiler production will be during the brooding period. After brooding, of course, there's a growing period. During the development, during the brooding period, the development and maturation of the gut is happen. So we have to provide a critical nutrient to optimize the gut health. Also the skeletal, the immune system will be mature in the early stage of the broiler production, especially in the first 10 days. So it's important to provide sufficient nutrient in the first 10 days. And also the brooding period also try to develop appetite for the broiler to consume more feed. Because if the broiler consume more feed, for example, faster feed, the growth will be much faster and the maintenance cost will be lower. At the end, cost production will be lower. So we have to encourage the brooding have to be designed properly that the animal, the broiler will grow smoothly and properly. So what happens when the broiler is not growing very well? This is the data, this is the old data. If the 7th day, for example, of the growing of the broiler, the growth is delayed, the body weight is delayed around 10 grams, for example, what happened during harvest period can be the difference will be 50 to 80 grams. So it's critical that it's the first 10 day or first 7 day that the broiler have to grow much faster. Otherwise, the production at the end will be lower. So very critical during the brooding period. So what happened with the brooding period? In early feeding, early growing, the animal will depend on the egg yolk, residual egg yolk. But we have to develop the digestive tract properly during the growing. Because in the digestive tract, there's immunity involved. In order to prevent the disease, the gut have to be clear up, gut to be healthy, because the immunity also develop in the broiler, is especially in the gut. So if we can control the early feeding, will be much faster grow. And what happened, the immunity resistant to the disease is much better. But the challenge with early feeding, what happened? The digestive system of the broiler is not developed very well. The enzyme production is limited, and so the immune system is sometimes compromised. So it's critical to provide the good gut health. So let me show you what happened with the early growth. This is the graph on demonstrated how the enzyme developed in animal, in the broiler, in the first 7 days. In the first 3 days, the lipase is not growing very well. Not only lipase, but other enzymes like amylase and trypsin. But particularly of the lipase, in the first 3 or 4 days, is not developed at all. So it's critical that we have to provide fat in the proper quality and better digestibility. Otherwise, the enzyme is not working very well. So not only that one, this is another graph indicating what happened when we feed it the animal in the first 7 days. If there's low in protein, this animal will not grow properly. So the early stage, the animal will respond much more pronounced when we're feeding the protein rather than carbohydrate. So it's critical that we formulate with high amino acid to promote the growth at early stage in the animal. So what happened with the oil? Now this is interesting subject because oil, normally to match up the energy requirement for the broiler feed, we have to provide the oil. The oil is benefit also, for example, not only for the energy, but also to improve the palatability. So the chicken will be able to eat properly. But also the oil will be important to reduce the dust in the feed mill. Because if you make the feed sometimes so dusty, we spray it with the oil, for example, 0.5%, the oil will reduce the dust. The oil also will act like a lubricant in the feed mill, so you can make a pelleted feed very nicely. However, the problem is if the enzyme inside of the animal is not developed very well, especially in the early stage, the oil that we added in the feed may not be absorbed very well. So this is important to be considered when using the oil. This is the data, what happened in the early stage, developed by Julian Weissman. If you provide the soybean oil, for example, the energy can be around 8,500 to 9,000. But in the early stage, especially in the first 7 days, for example, the energy level of the oil will be very low. Why the energy is low for the oil? This is related with the lipase. The enzyme is not developed very well. So the animal will not able to utilize fat properly. So this is even worse when we are using tallow. You know that high saturated fat coming from the animal, which is tallow, is less energy level compared to the soybean oil. However, in Southeast Asia, like Malaysia or Indonesia or Thailand also, so where's the position of crude palm oil? So there's a lot of report regarding what ability of the palm oil to be digested by the animal. Again, the type of oil also influence the energy value. This is the graph reported by Julian Weissman, and that this is affected by saturation. If we feed it more unsaturated oil, unsaturated fat, the energy content will be higher. So we have to select the oil which is high in unsaturated and reduce amount of the saturated fat for feeding broiler. So what happened to improve fat digestion inside of the young animal? There are several techniques has been proposed. In this case, is they develop feed additive in the market that can improve not only digestion of the fat, but also improve the gut health. So what kind of the additive available in the market? Some company try to introduce the lipase. You remember that the lipase is deficient in the early stage. So the company try to promote lipase to be added in the feed so we can contribute more lipase in digestive system. Some people try to use the antibiotic growth promoter replacement. Say, for example, they try to use essential oil to replace AGP so they can improve digestion inside of the gut. Some people try to introduce also emulsifier. There's lecithin has been developed in the market that can be used to emulsify the fat that can improve digestion. But of course, lately, there are bile acid. The bile acid, you know, the digestion system of the animal, they produce the bile acid naturally, they can improve digestion. Now, the bile acid can be developed commercially, they can be applied inside of the feed. So most fat is really not digested well, as I mentioned to you, for the young animal. So there's opportunity that we can select possibilities such as bile acid to improve fat digestion. So let's consider what happened with digestion of the oil inside of the animal. The bile acid inside of the animal normally acts like emulsifier because they have hydrophobic side and hydrophilic side. So they can make emulsion inside with the fat. So by making the emulsion with the bile, for example, the fat will be access to water. While the enzyme, the lipase enzyme, normally working in the water solution. So by making the emulsion, the lipase enzyme can work very well to digest fat. When the fat is digested, they can produce free fatty acid or monoglyceride. They can facilitate also to get the better absorption of vitamin, especially fat-soluble vitamin. So this is critical that the bile acid have to function properly inside of digestive tract of the animal. So the mechanism again here, we can draw it here that this is a TAG, what we call it 3-acylglycerol. 3-acylglycerol, in order fat, which is 3-acylglycerol, to be absorbed by the animal, they have to be hydrolyzed first using the lipase. In order lipase to work for the fat, you have to be emulsified, and bile acid play important role. So after the lipase working very well with fat, they produce monoglyceride and also free fatty acid. And this monoglyceride and fatty acid will be absorbed by the intestine of the animal to provide the energy for the broiler. So it's critical that emulsification should be developed inside of the digestive animal. Look at the bile acid. The structure is similar like a cholesterol. If you look at the structure, and the good thing with bile acid, what happened? the bile acid will work as emulsifier, but at the end of the digestive tract, the bile acid will be absorbed again, so can be recycled inside of the animal. So, but however, for the young animal, again, there's not sufficient enough of the bile acid. So the bile acid is a critical, like producing the micelle. They call the micelle like emulsion between fat and water. So using the bile acid, so the fat can be hydrolyzed and absorbed by the intestine. This is the diagram of intestinal wall. So the intestine can absorb the oil properly because of the bile acid. The proof that the bile acid working to the broiler, I pick up several research paper from the poultry science. This is the report back in early 1986. They prove it that in urinal content, the bile acid is very low, especially in the 9 day of age of the broiler. So the bile acid is not enough. So there's possibility that we can supplement the bile acid for the young animal. Another trial that reported the effect of the bile acid is also, if you look at in the positive impact, the significant impact is in early stage, in the day 0 to 7 rather than up to the grower period. So this trial related with the animal, with the broiler, and feeding different type of the bile acid, including cholic acid and the oxycholic acid, and the significant improvement is detected in the first 7 days. Another trial that reported in a few years ago, 2 years, 3 years ago, again, similarly, that to look at the level of the bile acid addition, the bile acid, if there's not enough, have little impact, but if it is too much, probably also have little impact. So that's the optimum level have to be added inside of the feed. In this case, the trial reported around 60 milligram per kilogram of feed to get the better improvement in the performance of the broiler. Another trial reported 2 years ago regarding possible reducing the energy inside the broiler feed, but supplemented with bile acid. The trial reported there's no interaction between energy level and also the bile acid, but there is significant improvement in all the trial by adding the bile acid. So bile acid is not really related interact with the energy level in the feed, but the bile acid try to improve the performance independently from the energy level. So before I make a conclusion, how to conduct the trial, feeding trial. In my opinion, if you want to conduct the trial for bile, for example, or any feed additive, you can put the product on the top of the formulation, but of course, you put extra cost. Some people, there's a reason recommended to try to reduce the energy level of the diet, several, for example, 60 or 80 calories to reduce the cost. At the same time, you can add it, for example, feed additive to compensate the reduction in the energy. If, for example, so there's a reason why if you want to conduct the trial, I recommend you have to have a positive control diet, which is existing with the energy level, or negative control diet, which is reduced in energy, how many calories, and then also negative control plus additive. What supplement are you going to add? So if A, B, C, the trial have to be conducted in 3 different treatments. If the result, everything is the same, for example, or not significant because of the addition of feed additive, there's possibility that you do a lot of over-formulation. If over-formulation, what happens? You reduce the energy level in certain level, doesn't have any impact because too much over-formulation. So in order to conduct the trial properly, you have to know what the requirement of the energy inside of the broiler. Try to put the energy level just barely enough for the performance. And then from that point, you have to reduce the energy level to get the negative control. So at least 3 different diets have to be conducted if you want to do the trial for the broiler to prove it whether feed additive is working well or not. So however, at the end of the day, when you try to consider using feed additive, first you have to look at the efficacy, whether the product is working or not, and you have to understand whether the product, what the mechanism that the product can improve the performance. So you have to review the literature. You have to look at the study properly to look at the possible efficacy. And secondly, to prove it in the trial that the product will improve efficiency, either performance getting better or cost production getting lower, or both of them, improve performance and cost reduction at the same time. So you have to prove it, the efficiency of the product. However, you have to consider also of the risk, because many trial it doesn't prove it at all. Because why? Because you are feeding over nutrient in many parts of the world. So a lot of broiler has been excess in nutrient, so you cannot see the difference in the performance at the end by adding of the feed additive. But again, at the end of the day, you have to calculate the economic return. How much the cost of the feed additive, how much the improvement that you can get it from the broiler performance, is that worthwhile or not, between the cost and the benefit. You have to make more money by using the feed additive or reducing the cost of production. Not based on the feeling, oh, I feel this is good, is that. Many farmers think like that. So no, I recommend that you have to conduct trial properly, study properly, and calculate properly. So purpose of feeding broiler, you have to remember that. Are you going to maximize the performance like a broiler index, FCR, or lowest cost production? In the difficult situation right now with the high price ingredient, I suggest you have to consider about lowest cost production based on the current price ingredient. You have to look for possible alternative. You have to use ingredient properly, like fat, using fat properly, and improve digestibility. At the end of the day, you have to reduce the cost production to produce, for example, 1 kilo of the broiler or 1 kilo of the carcass. So this is my presentation. I will like to conclude my presentation that I mentioned that cost of feed ingredient continue to increase probably up to the end of the year, because the production supply and demand and geopolitical situation will influence the cost of the feed ingredient. Because the high price, especially the energy, including the fat, you have to calculate properly that energy is expensive. And for feeding broiler, early nutrition has become critical, because early nutrition will impact the future growing. Lack of digestive enzyme inside of the gut and the gut development require feed additive, and opportunity that bile acid will be one of them to improve fat digestion. However, the research trial show that the bile acid will improve the broiler performance, but economic at the end will be calculated. At the end, are you able to reduce the cost of the production or not? So with that conclusion, I like to thank you so much for your attention. I will be happy to entertain any question that you have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Budi, for that presentation, wherein you explained well about improving broiler nutrition in Indonesia. So as usual, before we proceed to our Q&A, let's have our second poll question as flashed on your screen. Where did you learn about bile acids? So please answer in 10 seconds. Okay, time's up. So I think it's about time for us to proceed to our Q&A. So Dr. Budi, kindly join me now, and we will pick some of the questions from the audience. So one of the question is, do you use coconut oil in an animal diet instead of tallow or palm oil?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Okay, in my experience traveling in Asia, in Southeast Asia, the coconut oil is used mainly in the Philippines because availability. But in some country like Indonesia is the largest, or Malaysia is the second largest of the palm oil production, we normally use palm oil. Of course, you can use the coconut oil, you can calculate because the energy level is different. But in general, for cooking oil, for example, in Indonesia, coconut oil will be cost more expensive, double in Indonesia. So we prefer to use the palm oil at the moment. There's possibility also we can use it palm oil fatty acid distillate, which is mainly a lot of free fatty acid. But you have to consider how much the energy level of feeding broiler. Anyway, any type of oil is still possible. Some area using used cooking oil, the people call it yellow grease, that are possible to be used also. But you have to measure anything, the oil that you're going to use, you have to check the quality, because quality affect like the moisture, insoluble material, or unsaponifiable, including fatty acid composition, because affecting the value of the metabolizable energy. Over.
Okay, so on to our next question. He asked that apart from corn, is there any material that can be used as alternative energy source for poultry? Because his reasoning is that we can't always depend on corn with the current geopolitical issue.
No, not necessary that animal have to use corn, because corn is one of the cereal available in the world, which is high in energy. So in order to replace corn, there are available cereal depending on the some people may use, for example, wheat, when wheat is become economical to be used. In some area like in the Philippines, because corn become very expensive, local corn, and importing corn have to pay a lot of import duty. So a lot of people using wheat. However, when the price of wheat is going up also, sometimes the people may consider other cereal. Sometimes certain type of the year, the barley, for example, from Australia become available, and it can be very economically to be used for feeding poultry barley. In some people may use sorghum, for example, when the sorghum become available, any of the cereal can use, but you have to know the quality of the cereal. Secondly, in some area like Indonesia, for example, or Thailand, cassava can be used as the source of the energy. The cassava can be replaced, can be used to replace partly of the corn. So any kind of the material, when the price become economical, you can use it. Not necessary that animal. Over.
All right, so we're moving on to our third question. The question is, which one is the most important? Is it the bile acid or toxin binder in poultry feed?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again, please?
Which one is the most important? Is it the bile acid or toxin binder in poultry feed?
Wow, this is interesting question, because we can compare two different feed additive, because the mechanism is totally different. The toxin binder, you can use it for absorbing the toxin when the toxin has been detected in the feed. But bile acid has been used as emulsifier to improve stability of the fat. So totally different. What depending what, so we recommend you have to review what kind of the feed additive you're going to use, because different feed additive may have the different purpose and also different mechanism.
All right, I think we're having an audio difficulty from Dr. Budi's side. But for the rest of the questions, or if you have any further questions to him, you may just type it in our Q&A box and he will reply to you here on the chat box. Okay, so thank you so much, Dr. Budi, for your time today and for your presentation and answering some of the questions.
Okay, thanks for the question too. Bye-bye.
Okay, so
thanks for the question.
All right.
Too. Bye-bye.
So we're now jumping to our third speaker, who specializes in poultry science and animal welfare. He gained his Doctor of Philosophy degree at the Virginia Polytechnical Institute and State University. He is currently a professor at the Department of Animal Science at the University Putra, Malaysia, and he was the former head of the Agriculture and Food Cluster in the same university. Our third topic for today has something to do with the precision nutrition for broiler chickens under different environmental conditions in Malaysia. So joining now, Professor Dato Dr. Zulkifli Idrus. So good afternoon, sir. It's nice to have you here.
Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to thank the organizer, LACHANCE, for the opportunity to share some of our work on precision nutrition in chickens. And before I go into the subject matter, kindly allow me to introduce very briefly the Malaysian poultry industry. Okay, the Malaysian poultry industry is the most advanced subsector in the livestock sector. Malaysia produces about 0.07 million eggs of chickens per day, and 9% of these chickens being exported. And we also produce about 34 million pieces of eggs per day, and 60% of these eggs being exported, mainly to Singapore. Okay, and in terms of self-sufficiency ratio level, as shown here, we are almost self-sufficient in terms of poultry meat, 98.2%. This is according to statistics in 2019. And in terms of poultry eggs, our SSL is about 114%. And Malaysia has one of the highest per capita consumption rates in the world for chicken. In I think the poultry consumption per capita in Malaysia today is about almost 50 kg. Yeah? And as shown here, Malaysia is ranked number 3 in terms of poultry meat consumers. So we are number 3 after Israel and United States. So Malaysians love chicken meat very much, as shown here. Okay, as we know, the poultry feed comprise mainly corn and soybean. So corn and soybean made up about 80% of chicken feed, and the others mainly palm oil, rice bran, vitamin, minerals, and so on. And the thing is that almost 100% of corn and soybean meal used by the poultry industry in Malaysia, they are being imported. So we are almost totally dependent on imported corn and soybean meal. And as we know, I think the figure must be more or less the same as in other countries. But as shown here, the cost of producing a broiler chicken in Malaysia, 70% or more than 70% comprise the feed costs. Okay, so the others are, and next is the day-old chick. So feed cost is very important in determining the cost of producing chickens in Malaysia and also in other parts of the world. And as I mentioned just now, we are totally dependent on imported feed grain, mainly corn and soybean meal. So because of that, the industry is to some extent very vulnerable. And of late, there is a significant increase in the price of corn, as shown in the graph. You can see the price of corn has soared dramatically, starting from, you can see from September 2020 to December, the price of corn has increased very significantly. And the latest information I received, the price of corn this month has reached to about 1,900 ringgit Malaysia. Okay, so $1 is equivalent to 4.33 ringgit Malaysia. So the price of corn is extremely high today. And same thing with soya bean, as shown here. The price of soybean has also went up dramatically, and today the price of soybean meal in Malaysia is about 2,900 ringgit Malaysia per ton. So this is very high. And sorry, and because of the significant increase in the price of corn and soybean, the price of chicken feed has also soared significantly, as shown here. So in March this year, the price of chicken feed has reached about 2,700 ringgit Malaysia per ton. And because of the hike in the chicken feed price, definitely it has affected the chicken prices in Malaysia. And the retail price of chicken has increased, and because chicken is considered like one of the staple foods in Malaysia, it is a national issue when the price of chicken goes up. And the government has intervened by putting a ceiling price for the retail price of processed chicken. So it's being set to 8 ringgit 90 cents per kilo. So this started from February 5 and is expected to continue until June 5. Okay, until the end of the Eid celebration or the month of Shawwal. Okay, the ceiling price probably is good to the consumers, but to the farmers, it could be a big problem. So some farmers are not able to operate anymore because of the dramatic increase in chicken price. Sorry, dramatic increase in chicken feed price, and with the ceiling price being set by the government, the farmers are struggling to make a business out of chicken rearing, and some farmers claim that they are losing about 200 million ringgit per day with the price ceiling. And at one time there was a shortage of chicken meat supply in Malaysia, because some of the local farmers have stopped operation because they are not able to profit, and the government again has intervened and allowed importation of frozen chicken. And this is to ensure constant supply of chicken meat. And other than that, to safeguard the livelihood of the farmers and to ensure that the broiler farmers in Malaysia can continue to operate, the government has provided subsidies. The government has subsidized 60 cents per kg for chicken. So every kg of chicken produced by the farmers, the government will provide a subsidy of 60 cents for chicken and 5 cents per egg. So these definitely have or has helped the farmers to ensure that they are operating in a profitable manner. Okay, and because of this increase in chicken feed price, which resulted in the soaring of the retail price of chicken. It is very important for us to look into the issue of precision nutrition. Okay, because feed costs, as I mentioned earlier, feed costs account for about 70 to 75% of the total production cost. So precision nutrition is very important for both producers and nutrition suppliers. So what exactly is precision nutrition? It can be defined as meeting the nutritional needs of an animal under a specific set of conditions without under or overfeeding energy or a single nutrient. And the decision as to which feeding strategy is used may have a huge impact on the overall profitability of any broiler operation. And other than that, precision nutrition, in particular the protein content in the chicken diet, I mean, by practicing precision nutrition, can also reduce environmental pollution. Okay, so the big question now is, can we feed broilers below the recommended nutrient values? Okay, so I have here the COP 500 nutrition requirement. So these are the requirements in terms of crude protein, metabolizable energy, lyse, and all those amino acids, and also the minerals. Okay, and when we talk about precision nutrition, we need to also consider environmental factors, because stress, which is very common under intensive poultry production, may result in changes or responses that alter the intestinal tract. For example, there will be stress, can be thermal or non-thermal stress, can elicit physiological and immunological responses, impair the intestinal integrity and inflammation, and cause inflammation, and also modify the population of microflora in the GI tract of poultry. So this factor must be taken into account when we discuss about precision nutrition. Okay, low protein amino acid supplemented diets. Okay, protein source, as we know, is the most expensive component in broiler diets. And protein requires a specific quantity and balance of essential amino acids and nitrogen for synthesis of non-essential amino acids rather than crude protein per se. So crude protein is, to some extent, is quite meaningless. What is more important here is the amino acid requirement. Yeah. So and today there are various commercial amino acid or synthetic amino acids that are available, and this may allow us to reduce the level of crude protein in poultry diets. So supplementing low crude protein diets with synthetic amino acid has been shown to save costs, decrease nitrogen excretion, and improve heat tolerance in broiler chickens. Okay, I would like to share some of our work that have been published on precision nutrition in chickens. So this work entitled Effects of Protease Supplementation of Low Protein and or Energy Diets on Growth Performance and Blood Parameters in broiler chickens under heat stress condition. This work was published in Italian Journal of Animal Science in 2019. So in this work, basically, we had 7 types of diets as shown here. We have number 1, we have the normal protein, normal energy, starter and finisher. So the level for starter is 3035 ME, CP crude protein level 21%, the ME for finisher is Q180, and the crude protein percentage was 19%. Then we had the normal protein, low energy diet. You can see that the energy was reduced to 2985 in the starter diet and 3130 in the finisher diet. We also had the low protein, normal energy diet. So we maintained the recommended level of protein, but we reduced the energy. We reduced the protein, but we maintained the energy level as shown here. The protein we reduced from 21 to 18.5% in the starter, and in the finisher from 19 to 16.7%. And we also had low protein and low energy diet. And we also included protease enzyme at 500 ppm to the low protein, normal energy diet and to the low protein, low energy diet. So, and the birds were subjected to 2 different ambient temperatures. We had the unheated and the heated environment. Okay, the unheated birds were maintained under 23 Celsius from day 22 to 42, and for heated, birds were subjected to 34 Celsius for 7 hours daily from day 22 to 42. So this data are showing the feed intake of the birds from day 1 to 42, and as shown here, there was no difference in terms of feed intake among the diets, irrespective under unheated or heated environment. And I would like to emphasize that all experimental diets were fortified with synthetic feed-grade lysine, methionine, threonine, and tryptophan to provide the minimum amino acid recommended levels for POP 500. So there was no difference, irrespective of the ambient temperature. Okay, this is the weight gain data. All right, as shown here, there was no difference in terms of weight gain among the diets when the birds were raised under unheated environment. Okay, but when the birds were subjected to cyclic heat stress, you can see there were significant differences among the groups. You can see that birds fed normal protein, low energy, and normal protein, low energy plus protease. They showed the highest weight gain, but not significantly different from control. But other groups, although they were, these last 4 diets, although they had lower weight gain compared to the normal protein, low energy diets, but not different, not significantly different from the control diet, as you can see here. Okay, this is FCR. Okay, and interestingly, there were significant differences among diets within the unheated and heated group. You can see that when the birds were unheated, the normal protein, normal energy or control diet, birds had similar FCR compared to the low protein, normal energy diet. You can see here, right? So there was no significant difference. Same thing with the normal protein, low energy and the low protein, normal energy diet, as shown here. But when the birds were raised under heat stress condition, you can see that all of these 5 groups, they had similar FCR, okay, except for these 2, the low protein, low energy, and the low protein, low energy plus protease. So these 2 groups had significantly higher FCR as compared to the other groups. So you can see that not much differences in terms of FCR under heated and unheated environment. Okay, in this study, which was published in British Poultry Science in 2018, we determined the effect of supplementing diet other than the meeting the requirement of the limiting amino acids. We also look at the effect of supplementing diet with glycine. Glycine is a non-essential amino acid, but it is important for metabolic processes in poultry, and also for the production of uric acid. Okay, so in this study, we had 4 diets as shown here: normal protein, normal protein throughout, from normal protein level during the starter and finisher phases. Second, NPLP, normal protein during starter and low protein during finisher. And the third group, low protein starter, normal protein finisher. And the fourth group, low protein starter and low protein finisher. So as shown here, the normal protein was 222 grams per kg for the starter and 185 grams per kg for the lower diet. So the low protein, finisher reduced the crude protein to 147 grams per kg, and we fortified with glycine at 19.6 grams per kg. Okay, and so we also had the low protein LPNP, low protein diet, 173 grams per kg of crude protein, fortified with glycine during starter and normal protein. So this time we increased the glycine. We also included glycine. And the third group, low protein during starter and low protein during the grower period. Okay, so and we had 3 environmental conditions. We had the unheated group. Second, we had the cyclic heated, where the birds were heat stressed for 7 hours every day. And the other group, the birds were subjected to heat stress throughout the rearing period. So, okay, as shown here, let us look at the first environment, which is unheated. Okay, there was no difference in feed intake among the 4 dietary groups. No difference in weight gain, although the birds were fed a low protein diet, and no difference in FCR among the 4 dietary groups. Okay, and if you look at the cyclic heated, again, there was no difference among the 4 dietary groups. For feed intake, no difference in terms of weight gain, and also no significant differences in terms of FCR under cyclic heated environment. But interestingly, when the birds were subjected to constant heat stress, you can see that the feed intake of the normal protein, low protein group, they had lower feed intake compared to the compared to the control group. Similarly, the low protein group also had lower feed intake. And so as expected, because of the reduced feed intake, weight gain was also adversely affected, as shown here. So birds fed NTLP had significantly lower weight gain, and the similar trend was observed in the LTLP birds. And with regard to FCR, you can see that the NTLP birds had, and the LTLP birds, these two group of birds had significantly higher FCR as compared to the control and also the LTNP group. So what we can conclude from here is that the effect of reduced protein or crude protein in diet vary according to the environment. So under unheated and cyclic heated environment, diet did not have a significant effect on feed intake, weight gain, and FCR. But when the birds were exposed to constant heat stress environment, as shown here, the normal protein, low protein diet and the low protein diet had poorer performance. So at the same time, it shows that fortifying diets with glycine, a diet with lower protein, can result in equivalent performance as compared to the control birds. So this can be beneficial in terms of cost reduction. And other than heat stress, another common stressor in intensive production system is high stocking density. So in this study, we wanted to see whether we can feed reduced protein diets to chickens raised under higher stocking density. This work was published in Animal Production Science in 2019. Okay, so in this study, we had two diets. Actually, we had more, but I just singled out the diet which showed similar trend as the control diet. Okay, as shown here, the control starter, we had 21% CP and 3035 energy. The low protein and energy starter diet, the CP was 19%, the energy was 295. And finisher, the CP for control 19%, the energy for control was 3180. And the low protein energy starter diet, the protein was 90% and the energy was 3180. So again, the levels of lysine, methionine, threonine, and tryptophan in both diets were maintained. And as you can see here, okay, for the low stocking density, we raised the birds at 10 birds per meter square. For the high stocking density, we raised at 15 birds per meter square. And we did not observe any significant diet by stocking density interaction for body weight and FCR. So this shows that stocking density did not influence the protein or energy requirement of birds. And interestingly, as shown here, if you look at the body weight of birds of these two groups, there was no significant difference. Both birds showed similar body weight and also similar FCR. So this study shows that we can reduce protein and also energy in the diet without any detrimental impact on the growth performance of the broilers. Okay, as we know, the commercial broiler chicken diet is routinely fortified with vitamins and trace mineral premixes. Okay, actually, a portion of the required vitamin and trace mineral can come from major feedstuffs such as corn and soybean meal. So if we can omit both vitamin and trace mineral premixes from the finisher diet of broilers, we can reduce the feed cost by more than 2%. Withdrawing vitamin and trace mineral premixes from the finisher diet, not the starter diet, from the finisher diet under the hot and humid tropical environment in Malaysia. Okay, so we had 4 groups here as shown here. The first group, we deprived vitamin and trace mineral supplement for the last 3 weeks. That means from day 21 till day 42. The second group, we deprived the last 2 weeks. Okay, the vitamin and mineral withdrew from the last 2 weeks, and the third group, the last 1 week, the birds were deprived from supplemental vitamin and trace minerals, and the last group was controlled. I mean, the birds received vitamin and trace mineral throughout the rearing period. And interestingly, as shown here, we can remove the vitamin and trace mineral supplement even up to 3 weeks without any adverse effect on the body weight, feed intake, and FCR of the birds. So by practicing this, we can reduce feed cost by more than 2%. Okay, I missed one point here. Actually, in this study, we also conducted this the same experiment under low and high stocking density, and both under both environments, the bird showed the same trend in terms of body weight, feed intake, and FCR. Okay, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation just now, Malaysia is totally dependent on imported corn as a source of energy for poultry. So the big question is, can we replace corn in poultry feed? A lot of studies have been done over the years or over the decades to look into alternatives to corn, such as tapioca, sweet potato, and so on. But other than determining the suitability of these alternatives in terms of nutrient content, it's also very important that the alternative is available in abundance in Malaysia. Okay, for example, a sweet potato. We do not have enough sweet potato to feed the population of chickens in Malaysia. Same thing with tapioca or cassava. But one of the, to me, one of the best alternatives to corn is palm kernel cake or PKC. Okay, this is the PKC is obtained from the kernel after the kernel oil is extracted. So this is a byproduct from the oil palm industry, and PKC is a good source of fat, protein, minerals, and carbohydrate. And Malaysia produced about 2.3 million tons of PKC in 2021. So Malaysia is the second highest world producer of PKC. So as we know, PKC is, we can feed a very high level of PKC to ruminants. There's no problem. Although PKC, the level of fiber is high, it can be as high as 20%. But it's not a problem for ruminants. But for non-ruminants, like poultry, high fiber diet can cause problems to the birds. So actually we have done a number of studies looking at how we can reduce the fiber content in the PKC, and we found that one of the most practical ways of reducing fiber in PKC is by removing the shell, or by having a de-shell PKC, because the shell of the PKC contains a lot of fiber. So by reducing or by removing the shell or reducing the level of shell in the PKC, we can reduce the fiber content, and it will be more suitable for chickens. We have done several trials, and we showed that the de-shell PKC can be provided to chickens up to 25% without any adverse effect on the growth performance. And of course, if we can cut down the use of corn, it can have a significant impact in terms of feed costs. Okay, what about protein? So should we be relying on soybean meal forever? I think we should be thinking of alternatives. So what is the protein feedstuff of the future? Okay, this is the answer. Insect, or the black soldier fly in particular. So why insect? Or why black soldier fly, larva meal? Okay, the role of insects in the circular economy has far-reaching potential, and it can solve global protein and waste challenges. The beauty about these black soldier fly larvae, the feedstock comes from waste. Okay, so so that means other than it can be a source of protein for poultry, at the same time it can solve or it can manage waste problem. Okay, the waste here can be waste from the oil palm industry, can be kitchen waste, domestic waste. So it can reduce our headache about managing waste. All right, and it has the production of this black soldier fly larva has little environmental impact, as shown here. In terms of land use, it's much lesser if you compare the per kilogram of protein compared chickens and the black soldier fly larva. You can see that land use is very much lesser in the larva, the amount of water used, the energy used. So it is very environmental friendly. And the larva, as I mentioned, they are flexible in what they eat, transform large variety of feedstock, a very fast growth cycle, rich in protein, lipids, and minerals, and suitable for mass rearing. Okay, this is just to show an overview of how the bioconversion of the organic waste from waste to you can see here from waste to animal feed. Other than that, the larvae can also produce oil. One of the purpose of the oil is for cosmetic industry, and also the waste from the larva, which is called frass, can be a good source of organic biofertilizer. So this clearly shows that the BSF larvae has great potential to replace soya bean. And some very interesting facts about this black soldier fly larvae. It needs less than 2% land and emits less than 4% carbon to produce 1 kg protein compared to cattle. And 1 kg of BSF eggs grows to 6 tons of live larvae in 12 days. So they are fantastic bioconverter, generate zero waste. 1 kg eggs will hatch to 35 million larvae in 3 days and capable to bioaccumulate 45% crude protein and 35% fat on dry matter basis. Actually, the crude protein level varies according to the feedstock. So the fat quality is equivalent to coconut oil. And as you know, insects or larvae actually is a natural diet for many livestock species. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Idris, for your presentation. And I hope everyone is still with me. And may I remind everyone to answer our poll question so you can get the chance of receiving a special gift from LACHANCE. So now on to our third poll question. Are you interested in trying bile acids in your farm? Okay, time is up. So thank you once again for answering our poll question. And so we're going to open the floor for your questions. So joining me now is Professor Dr. Zulkifli Idris to answer some of your questions. And one of these are, what software do you use in formulating your feeds in order for you to determine more or less the precision of your formula diet?
Okay, thank you, Jomia. Thank you for the question. Well, depends. Sometimes we use Brill, and sometimes we use some of my students they use Excel to prepare the formulation. Both are to me they can come up with very accurate formulation.
Okay, so the other question is why breed company still recommends high crude protein level?
Okay, I think for the breeding company, I think they have to be on the safe side. You know, to ensure that their birds can produce or can reach optimum production or growth. Okay, so it's a common practice for them to recommend. I don't say high level of protein, but the recommended level of protein. Okay, but as I mentioned earlier, crude protein, I don't say it's not important, but what's more important is the amino acid profile of the diet. That is more important. But that is actually what is required by the birds, not really crude protein. You can have a diet with high crude protein, but it's made up of non-essential amino acids. So the main thing is whether the formulation or the diet can meet the amino acid requirement of the birds. So we have shown from our previous work, we can reduce the level of crude protein provided the amino acid requirement of the birds being met. So this is very important, the amino acid requirement, especially the limiting amino acids like methionine, lysine, and tryptophan.
All right, so jumping into the third question, one of the audiences said, how can you convince feed formulators that they can exclude vitamins and trace minerals in the first 3 weeks in broilers? Okay,
interesting question. Actually, the work that we did and we published, we drew the vitamin and mineral supplement during the finisher stage, not during the starter phase. Okay, we drew the mineral supplement, vitamin and mineral, the last 3 weeks, the last 2 weeks, and last 1 week. Based on our previous studies, it's not advisable to remove vitamin and mineral supplement during the starter phase. Okay, so what we have done, removal of the supplement during the finisher stage, not during the starter phase. The starter, if you remove the starter phase, I think the outcome can be disastrous. Okay, so, and I also like to add, actually, in that study, which I cannot show because of time constraint, we also measured leg problems in the birds. And there was no significant difference in terms of incidence of leg problems, even though we removed the vitamin and mineral supplement for the last 3 weeks. So that means the birds during the finisher stage, they can obtain sufficient vitamin and trace mineral from the feed ingredients available in the feed. Okay.
All right. So due to the limited time that we have, we're taking the last question. In your trial, how much of the costs were reduced?
Okay, it depends whether we reduce the protein only or the energy, both protein and energy. And also, I'm not able to give an absolute answer because it depends a lot on the price of corn at the time, the price of soybean, and also the price of synthetic amino acid. So in terms of saving, it can vary according to the time. But now with the soaring price of corn and soybean, I think this is a good time for us to practice precision nutrition. Okay, but of course the cost saving will be lesser when the price of the prices of corn and soybean are lower.
All right. So thank you so much, Professor Idris. And if you have any questions for him, you can still type it in our Q&A box, and he will reply to it later.
Okay.
So once again, thank you so much for your time and for being here today.
Thank you, Jomia, and all the participants of the webinar. Thank you very much. Please feel free to email me or contact me if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, so into our fourth speaker for today's webinar. He is a professor and head of the Nutrition and Clinical Nutrition Department of the Faculty of the Veterinary Medicine at Cairo University. He is the manager of Animal and Poultry Research Center at the same university and also the manager of Animal and Poultry Nutrition Center in Giza. He is a consultant of animal and poultry nutrition in Egypt and MENA. Please, let's all welcome Professor Dr. Khalid Nasir to discuss his presentation on improving nutrients in poultry feed, especially energy utilization in Egypt.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My colleagues in Muslim countries, I said Ramadan Kareem and happy Eid al-Fitr and Allahumma ballagna laylat al-Qadr. First of all, I would like to thank my colleague in LACHANCE on this webinar. Yes, my lecture today is how to improve nutrients in the poultry feeds, especially energy utilization in Egypt. My name is Professor Dr. Khalid Nasr, Professor and the head of Nutrition and the Clinical Nutrition Department, Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, Cairo University. I am a consultant in Egypt and the Gulf and Middle East areas for nutrition and the clinical nutrition for monogastrics and ruminants. I am consultant also for many poultry farms and feed mills in Egypt. I am manager of the Animal and Poultry Research Center and Faculty of Veterinary Medicine University. Also, I am manager of Animal Nutrition Service Center. Next please. The poultry industry globally, not all in Egypt, depends on three axes, like triangle. The first axis is the bird or the chick. Either this bird or a chick is ready for meat production, broilers, chicken, or for egg, table egg production, layers, or for tile egg production, breeders, or GP grandparents. You know, nowadays we have high genetic potential in each type of the chicks. With this improvement in genetics of these different breeds, for every type of chicks need the second axis, which is the poultry feeds or the feeding and nutrition of these birds. Must be balanced feeds with the best cost, which is the least cost feed formula, covering all nutrient requirements according to the type of the bird and according to the breeds of this type of the birds. And third angle with which is important, which is the management and hygiene of these birds. In Egypt, we have closed poultry farms, we have semi-closed poultry farms, we have open poultry farms, but little or few numbers of open poultry farms. Nowadays, not also in Egypt, but globally, the next piece, the raw materials in the poultry feeds prices are incredibly high, especially the world search for the different source of energy, especially the sources of energy from the fat and the oils are very expensive as well. So the action and the objectives of this webinar, how to reduce the feed cost, in the same time give high performance for every types of chicks, either broilers or layers or breeders or grandparents. So if the solution is remove or take off the fat and oil of the feed, but you know, the fat and the oil, especially vegetable oils, not only the main source of energy for the poultry, but also as a source of polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are essential fatty acids, especially linoleic acids. We know we have 3 types of essential fatty acids: linoleic, linolenic, arachidonics. So the importance of vegetable oils and fats, not only the main source of energy, but also as a source of essential fatty acids. Also, we have different types of the feeds in Egypt. We have mash feeds and we have crumble or pelleted feeds. Mash feeds always given to layers and breeders. So we need a source of energy from vegetable fat and oils as anti-dusting. Not only main source of energy, but also anti-dusting, prevents the dusting of expensive raw materials, fine raw materials, like the amino acids, like the monocalcium phosphate, like the premix, like the other feed additives, prevents the dusting of this fine line for these fine raw materials. Also anti-dusting, also palatable, give higher palatability of the feeds, as a source of essential fatty acid, which is important for growth of the bird, important for fertility and hatchability, especially in breeders or layers or grandparents, especially for the bone, which is important for immunity. Yeah. So now we are in Egypt. We have 10 million ton feeds. Next, please. We have 10 million feeds produced by the different feed mills. We have big sized feed mills or class A feed mills, which produces 2,000 or 3,000 ton feed daily, about 60 or 90,000 ton feed monthly. And we have class B feed mills in Egypt, which can produce about 6,000 or 7,000 ton feed monthly. And also we have the class C feed mills, which produces about 3,000 ton feeds monthly. You know, in Egypt, 90 or 95% of the production of these feed mills for broiler chickens. In Egypt, we need 1 billion and 300 million of broiler chicken annually. Egypt can produce these numbers of broiler chickens, but we have a lot of stresses in the poultry industry in Egypt. Some physiological stresses, some pathological stresses, some produced from raw materials, imported from abroad, yes, and we suffer globally, yes, from the higher prices of different raw materials in the poultry feed. For example, we have broiler chickens, we have broiler chicken in Egypt, reared for 33 or 35 days. Average initial body weights as a hatch about 40 or 42 grams. Reared for this 33 or 35, classified into 3 stages. Broiler starter, give crumble feeds for 10 or 15 days. Yes. The birds consume about 500 gram feed, crumble feeds for these 2 weeks. Then change it to broiler growers, continue for 2 weeks. 3rd week can give also coarse crumble feeds. And the 2nd week of grower gives the pelleted feeds. Also change it to broiler finisher, pelleted feeds up to marketing and slaughtering. Next, please. Now in Egypt, we can targeting feed conversion rate 1.4 to 1. Actually, the broiler chicks can consume 1 kilogram, 1 kilogram 400 can give 1 kilogram body weight or daily body weight gains. So in the broiler cycle, which lasts to 33 or 35 days, the bird can consume 3 kilograms up to 3 kilogram 250, can give over 2 kilogram body weight. So in Egypt, now we reach FCR below 1.4. We reach to 137, 136 to 1. The broiler chick consuming 1 kilogram 370 grams feeds give to 1 kilogram body weight. Next, please. So, next, please. So we can, yeah, in Egypt, we have advanced poultry industry, either in broilers or layers or breeders. We have different breeds for broiler chickens, like Cow 500, Ross 3008, Argo Acres, Hubbard. We have also different breeds for layers, for H&N, Lumen, High 6, Bovins, yeah, and also for broiler breeders or layer breeders, yes, in Egypt. We have a good results, yes, good performance for broilers or layers or breeder in Egypt, because we have good check, yes, need balanced, least cost, higher bioavailability of nutrients in their feeds, with excellent management and hygiene. But the diseases become more than before. We have a lot of viral challenges, especially in the broiler farms, from mycotoxin contaminations from the raw materials, from some viral diseases like avian influenza, Newcastle, IB, Gumboro. We have a lot of challenge. Although we have a good performance data for our chicken in Egypt. Next, please. Also, we have a lot of stress factors, either physiological stresses or pathological stress, as I discussed before. Physiological stress may come from higher genetic potential of the chicks, needs high nutrient requirements, because we need high productivity, high performance. And we are among of Mediterranean countries. We have a lot of physiological stress like heat stress. And we have semi-closed poultry farms. We have few open poultry farms. We have two systems of rearing in Egypt. Especially the broilers, either the deep litter system or in cages. Now we increases the poultry farm, broiler farms with the cages, in order to avoid the many challenges, especially the coccidiosis, and to avoid some gastrointestinal problems. Next, please. So, which I said, we have mash feeds for layers mainly, for breeders, and we have pelleted feeds and the crumble feeds, yes, especially for broilers. And also we have extruded feed, but few in poultry, more in aquaculture, more in pet food, yes, and we have flakes also, feed flakes, especially for cats. So we have in Egypt advanced feed processing technology. We have a lot of feed mills have 4 or 5 feed lines with the capacity of each line or pelletizers about 25 tons per hour. we have. So we can produce about 2,000 tons or 3,000 ton feed for players daily. So we have advanced feed processing technology, especially for the poultry feeds in Egypt. Next, please. So our poultry feeds based on corn, soya, bean-based diets. These the following feed raw materials or feed ingredients in the poultry feeds. The main core of the poultry feeds is the yellow corn. And the inclusion rate of the yellow corn about 50 or 65%. The second core in poultry feed is soybean meal. We always work on soybean meal 46 or 48% crude protein. Also, we have corn gluten meal, 60% crude protein, but maximum inclusion rate not reach 7%. Also, we have fermented soya, we have high fat soybean meal, we have full fat soybean meal, we have also vegetable oils like soya oils, and these are the different inclusion rates in the front of each ingredients. We have the sources of calcium and phosphorus. We have defluorinated dicalcium phosphate or monocalcium phosphates, and we have ground limestones, common salt, premixes, broiler or layers or breeder premix, and synthetic amino acids. We have methionine, we have lysine, we have celanine, tryptophan, valine, and the other feed additives, nutritional or non-nutritional. So the aim of these feeding trials was to carry it out in Cairo University Faculty of Veterinary Medicine to investigate the effect of a dietary supplemental bile acid renin on the growth performance, carcass characteristics, some serum lipid metabolites, and intestinal lipase enzyme activity in bone chicken. Next, please. Our material and deposit, experimental design and diet composition. Next, please. Next. The feeding trials was conducting using 1,200 SH Ross 308 broiler pigs, kept in deep litter floor pens enclosed system. These birds are divided randomly into 3 equal groups, and each group was subdivided into 5 replicates, and each replicate contains 80 birds. Next, please. The experimental designs, the feeding trials, the period of these feeding trials only for 31 days. Will not complete to 35 days. You have 3 groups. Treatment 1 called positive control. Positive control fed only the basal diet with any supplementation. Second group, the birds fed the basal diet supplemented with 200 gram union per ton feed on top. So we have positive control, basal diet only. We have bile acid supplemented group, basal diet supplemented with 200 gram per ton feed running on top. Third group, we have reformulated basal diet minus 30 kilocalorie per kg, 30 kilocalorie, and formulated and supplemented reformulated basal diet minus 30 kilocalorie and supplemented with renin at the rate of 200 grams per ton feed. So we have 3 different groups. T1 fed the basal diet only, treatment 2 or T2 fed renin on top, basal diet supplemented with renin on top. T3, we have reformulated diets minus 30 kilocalories from the energy requirements of the broiler chick, either in broilers, in starter or grower finisher, and supplemented with renin, called reformulated. Next, please. The basal and experimental diet for composition and the chemical analysis of diets. Next, please. This is in the left side, the composition and the analysis of the starter basal diet, and you know the renin 0, yeah, renin is 0, and this the the chemical analysis of the basal starter diets. This reformulated starter basal diet minus 30 kcal and supplemented with 200 gram renin per ton feeds. Next, please. The same for grower basal diets and the grower reformulated diet with renin 1. Next, please. Next. Also for finisher basal diet and reformulated finisher diet with renin, this 0 inclusion rate of renin in the basal diets, and this reformulated finisher diet with 200 gram renin per ton feed. Next, please. Results. Next. First, the gross performance parameters. Next. Yes, this is a table showing the body weight developments during the starter period for 12 days, grower period for 25 up to 25 days, finisher up to 31 days. All experimental periods 31 days. So we have significant increase in the body weights in the group 3, which is reduced metabolizable energy 30 kilocalorie and supplemented with the bile acid with the called reformulated. Yeah, this group fed reformulated diets, either starter or grower or finisher, yes, with 30 minus 30 kilocalorie. Yeah, the T3 or group 3 show significant increase in the body weight during the different training phase, during starter, yeah, during grower, during finisher, yeah, then the control 1 and then the T2 or group 2, which fed the basal diet supplemented with the bile acid renin on top. Okay. Okay. Next, please. Also, the body weight gain. This is statistical analysis, not significant, but numerical increase in body weight gain. Also, the last slides for body weight development for body weight in a starter grower, not statistically increased, but numerical increase in body weight and body weight gain in T3 or group 3 than the T1 control 1 or than T2. Also, non-statistical significant increase in the body weight or body weight gain between the different groups, but we have significant increase, significant improvement in the body weight and the body weight gain in group 3 or T3, which fed reformulated basal diet, minus or reducing 30 kilocalorie from the energy requirements of the bird and supplemented with renin at 200 grams per ton feed. Next, please. So the feed consumption also, we have significant significant difference between the feed intake or the feed consumption, yes, among the T3 or T2 and T1 for feed consumption during starter. Yeah, T3 more feed intake than T2 and T1 during starter phase. Also, during the grower phase, the T2 consume more feed than the control and than T3. And during the finisher phase, which lasts for 6 days approximately, yeah, no significant variation in the feed consumption, although we have less feed consumed in T3 and T1 than T2. Next, please. For the FCR, also we have non-significant difference during 12 days for starter periods or up to 25 days growers, but we have significant improvement in the feed conversion rate in the T3, which fed in T3 group, which fed reformulated basal diet, reducing the energy requirements 30 kilocalorie and supplemented with renin at 200 grams per ton feeds. We have significant improvement in FCR 1.49 than the other treatments. Next, please. Also, for the cumulative performance of the broiler chicken, as summarized, we have improved in body weights in the supplemental renin or bile acid groups than the control one, improve in body weight, improve in body weight gain, improve in feed intake, improve overall, improve in FCR during the whole period, whole 31 days. 131 feed conversion ratio in group 3. We have significant improvement in supplemental renin groups than the control one, especially the T3 reducing metabolizable energy and supplemented with renin. We have significant improvement in European efficiency production factor. We have more than 500 European efficiency production factor. Then we have significant improvement in European efficiency production factor in supplemental group than the control one. And between the supplemental group, we have significant improvement in T3 than the T2. Mortality rate, we have non-significant variation in the mortality percent among the different 3 groups, either the control or supplemental one. Next, please. The carcass traits or the carcass quality. Next, please. For dressing percent and for breast percent, for thigh percent, for drum percent, we have non-significant difference in this carcass parts, yes, between the control and supplemental group, but the most important one, in the abdominal fat percent, we have significant decrease in the supplemental group with renin at 200 gram renin per ton feed than the control one. This is the most important one. Next, please. Also for the giblets, we have non-significant variation in the yield of the liver or gizzard or the heart between the control and the supplemental one. Next, please. Also for the immune organs, we have non-significant difference in the spleen or the persa weight percent between the control and supplemental one. Next, please. So before conclusion, we have blood biochemical indices or parameters measured during these experiments, but not finished yet the full analysis with also the intestinal lipase enzymes. And I promise you to show later on the blood biochemical indices in the form of cholesterol levels, triacylglycerols, LDL, HDL, and also the pancreatic lipase. In conclusion, please, next. So the bile acid supplements in the form of renins in the group of prolyte shakes in treatment 2 and treatment 3 achieved enhanced broilers, body weight gain, FCR, and the ribbon efficiency production factors than the control 1:1. Also, the supplemental group with renin in the form of T2 or T3 reported improved relative weights of the carcass, breast, drumsticks, and size than the control 1. The most important one, the abdominal fat percent, significant low levels in supplemental group in T2, T3 than the control 1. The T3, which fed the basal diet, reformulated with minus or reduction of 30 kilocalories from the energy requirements and supplemented with renin, exhibited almost the optimal performance. Next, please. So before I thank you for your attention, I have, if we have many questions, is okay, please write me in the chat here or send me by email. Thank you for attending these webinars, and hopefully good luck. And happy Ramadan, happy Eid Fitr Mubarak. Thank you for attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Nasir, for your very detailed presentation, I must say. Indeed, I hope everyone here learned on how we can improve nutrients in poultry feeds. So are you still guys with me? So why not we have another poll question to refresh your mind? So flashing into your screen, which platform you are daily using for the info of the industry? Please answer our fourth poll question. Okay, time's up. So joining me here again, Professor Khalid Nasir, to address some of your questions. So Professor, one of the question is, if we are going to use a full fat soybean, how should we adjust the formulation to save the energy?
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to know first, the full fat soybean meal is considered as a feedstuff for energy and the protein sources. We know the full fat soybean meal is extruded feedstuff rich in protein, about 34 to 36% of crude protein, and the fat range from 18 to 22, average 20% of the fat. The big problem is the higher fat percent in these raw materials. So if we introduced in the poultry feeds, can reduce maximum from 20 to 12 or 13%, yes, and they must be not stored maximum for 3 to 5 days. Yeah, each 5-ton car with the feed mill and finished can give other transfer, yeah, because afraid of rancidity. Also, if we increase the inclusion rate of this raw material, can make problems in the feed processing. Yeah, more fineness in the pelleted feeds, more rancidity, yeah, and more mycotoxin. This must be the precautions for using this like material full fat soybean meal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your explanation, Professor. So another question from the audience. The question is, what are the benefits of fat coating systems in feed mills, and how can we reduce the cost from this point?
You know that most of the poultry feeds or poultry diets in the world are plant origin. So we mainly depend on the cereal grains and the vegetable fat or oils as the main source of energy. And nowadays, the prices of the raw materials, especially from the vegetable oils, are incredibly high. So if we using either plant diet with vegetable oils, maximum for broiler feed, for example, we maximum use up to 3% of vegetable oils like soya oils. Or you can take off the vegetable oils as a free oils and you can use full fat soybean meal or high fat soybean meal. Also is considered as a raw material for protein and energy source. The importance of the vegetable oils, not the rich source of energy among all feedstuff or among nutrients like carbohydrates or protein, as I explained in my lectures, and the source of essential fatty acid, and. So, how to maximize the utilization of this amount or this percent of vegetable oils, although have higher prices. So we must improve or maximize the digestion and the absorption of these fat or oils by using like gut emulsifiers like the bile acid or lysolecithin or lecithin or other phospholipids. Yeah?
Okay. Yeah, so actually we have a couple of questions here, but since we're running out of time, I'll take one last question for you, sir. So the last question is, are there any differences in using this product in pellet and extrude?
I don't, please, again, please.
He's asking if there are any differences in using this product in pellet and extrude.
Ah, okay. No difference when using the products in the experiment, yes? The product in the experiment, the bile acid, yes? If this question to use the product like bile acid in pellets or in extruder, there is no difference. There is no difference. But you know, I am afraid in feed processing by extrusion for very sensitive raw materials, especially or feed supplement, especially enzymes, especially amino acid, especially vitamins, especially biological toxin binders. We have the coating machine after extrusion, not inside the extruders. We put it in a coating machine or flavoring machine after the extrusion process. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Nasir. And for all those who still have questions for Professor, you can type your questions here, or you may also send it to info@sdlachance.com, and Professor Nasir will get back to you. Once
Okay.
again, thank you so much for your time today, and we hope to see you again in the future webinars. Okay, so we're now down to our last speaker. So I hope you'll stay with us until the end of this webinar. Our fifth speaker today is a senior nutritionist who graduated from Shandong Agricultural University and majored in animal nutrition and feed processing. He has worked as feed quality control manager, regional feed formulator, and technical director and general manager in several big companies, including Blue Mountain Group, Hemi Group, and Tyson Food Incorporated. He has over 20 years practical experiences in poultry feed and breeding. Today, he will discuss the application in cases of bile acid in reducing cost and increasing efficiency in poultry in China. May I call on Mr. Wang Zhenmi to share with us his presentation for today.
大家好，我是山东隆昌集团技术服务中心的王建民。下面由我来给大家交流胆汁酸在肉鸡和蛋鸡降本增效上的一个应用。主要交流的内容分3部分，第一部分是常用降本增效措施，第二部分是肉鸡降本增效的案例，第三，蛋鸡降本增效的案例。首先讲一下家禽降本增效的一个措施。首先我们都知道有个古语叫家趁万贯，带卯的不算，这也说明了我们饲养过程中要加强生物安全的管理，一旦鸡只得病，损失是非常严重的。第二个是加强鸡舍温度的管理，所以说在常用的温度下，温度越高，蛋鸡的采食量会越低，节约的饲料成本也就会越多。假设饲料能量按2650千卡每公斤计的话，温度每增加1度，能量需求就会降低4000卡每只每天，采食量会降低1.5克每只每天。第三个就是数据化管理，数据化管理的目的就是根据它的饮水和采食的规律，可以看出这个鸡群是否有异常，来及时的调整控制。第三个还有一个体重管理，体重管理的目的就是在达到同样生产性能的情况下，鸡只的重量越小，它的维持消耗就会越低，鸡的采食量也会越低。左边这是海兰鹤的这个遗传育种，你看体重从1990年到20年到2010年，它这个体重是往下降的，所以说在达到同样生产性能的情况下，它的采食量是每年是递减的。右边这个是农大3号，一个体重的一个图线，所以说它这个体重只有1600克左右，所以说它的采食量只有90到100克，所以说采食量非常低，但是它的产卵性能并不差。饲料能量按2650千卡计算的话，体重每增加50克，能量需求就会增加4.5千卡，采食量就会增加1.7克。蛋重管理，我们卖鸡蛋都是按枚来卖的，一箱都是360枚，就是放在蛋坨里面。所以说在客户接受的情况下，这个蛋重越小，所以说我们的饲料消耗就会越低。所以说在客户接受的情况下，蛋重越轻，饲料消耗就会越低。所以说蛋重管理也是非常重要的。第二个方面就是饲料成本的控制。首先是玉米豆粕减量替代，因为近2年玉米和豆粕的价格在高位运行，影响饲料成本是非常高的。 所以说现在都在考虑玉米和豆粕的减量替代。玉米的减量替代一般都是使用一些糙米、稻谷、进口大麦、高粱等。使用这些原料一定要注意原料的一个霉变和陈化问题，因为放的时间长了以后，脂肪酸值会变高，脂肪酸值高了以后，对这个能量影响是非常大的，对代谢能。所以说使用这些原料的时候，要根据情况，代谢能的指标要做相应的一个调整。豆粕的减量替代，主要是要用一些非常规的性价比高的蛋白原料来替代，如氨基酸渣、花生粕、DDGS、羽毛粉等。使用这种原料，配方优化时一定要用有效氨基酸的模型来优化。如果用总氨基酸的话，可能给以前的配方结构变化比较大的话，质量就会出现一个大的浮动。再有就是对性价比高的蛋白原料要加大用量，要根据自己的经验，以确保产品质量的前提下，来加大。如花生粕可以加到8%，蛋白粉可以加到7%，羽毛粉可以加到2%。当然也要根据品种和阶段的不同，会有所差异。第二个就是油脂的利用率提高油脂的利用率，降低油脂的添加量。油脂2022年豆油的价格一直在1万块钱以上，没有低于1万过。所以说油的价格对饲料成本影响也是非常大的。近几年油的添加量一直在往上增加，所以说怎么来降低油脂的用量，来降低成本，这是大伙考虑的一个主要问题。直接降油肯定是不行的，直接降油的话，能量会降低，采食量会增加，最终养殖成本并没有降低。所以说我们只能在降低油脂用量的前提下，提高油脂的一个利用率，来达到降本的一个效果，还可以保证养殖成绩。第三个就是饲料配方的精准化。饲料配方精准化也是养殖场要根据自己饲养的品种、饲养的阶段和生产性能来选择相应的饲料。饲料厂要根据养殖品种、养殖模式、当地气候来配置最合适的，也是最佳营养浓度的一个饲料。所以说我们在饲料方面，在配置前一定要把原料氨基酸数据要与实际库存的数据一定要相符。从表上可以看出，都是玉米、小麦，但是氨基酸差异是比较大的。所以说我们只有把数据库的氨基酸和实际库存原料的氨基酸相符了，才能达到你设计的一个生产成绩。这原料代谢能也要与实际库存原料一定要相符。这是7个玉米的检测数据，最低的代谢能3179，最高的3452，所以说差了200多大卡，所以说对成本影响也是巨大的。包括后边的麸皮，一个是1576，一个是1836，也是接近300大卡，所以说这个影响成本也是非常大的，特别是淡季和种季用麸皮比较多的一些饲料品种。所以说同种原料受产地、厂家、储存和加工方式等因素的影响，营养指标代谢能会存在一个较大的一个差异。建议原料进场应根据检测项目及时的检测或送检，避免不必要的损失，也为我们精准营养提供相应的一个依据。第三个就是原料数据库修订与配方调整的一个批次。原料数据库的修订，我们要在每次配方调整以前，要对所有在库原料的数据进行修订，要根据化验室的数据、库存的批次和我们使用量来调整。假设说我5天调整一次，要根据这5天的使用量，根据库存的批次来调整你的数据库。配方调整的频次一般我们是5天或者是1周，这个要根据自己的实际情况。频次越高，你的产品的质量相对就会越稳定。第四个，功能性添加剂的合理选用，要充分利用每类添加剂的功能特点，按需添加，就避免同类产品的重复使用。 第二个就是关注保肝健肠和体免，因为近几年霉菌毒素比较严重，所以说保肝是非常必要的。第四个就是管理饲料品质，避免饲料问题造成的一个损失。饲料营养是基础，也是养殖成绩达到我们想需求的一个基础。所以说原料方面对霉菌毒素的污染、优质不合格，近2年是普遍存在的，所以说对饲料原料要严格把控。饲料进汤后，肠道疾病是目前主要的一个挑战。下面是我们2021年我们集团研发中心检测的1088份样品霉菌毒素的一个统计数据。我们检测的有饲料、植物性原料、麸类、麸类和玉米副产品。从表中可以看出，玉米赤米系统和O2毒素的检出率是非常高的。2021年216份成品饲料样品中，霉菌毒素的污染情况可以看出，O2和玉米赤米系统的检出率达到了97%，最高值 O2 毒素达到了4384，玉米赤米系统达到了3258，这都是非常高的一个数据了。从这个表上可以看出，你看超标率也是非常高的，玉米赤米系统超标率达到了1%， 18%，O2 的也达到了10%。我们做饲料的时候，有时候会检测到，我检测我的饲料霉菌毒素并不超标，但是养殖现场会发现霉菌毒素中毒的一个症状，这是什么原因呢？这就是我们表上可以看到的，大部分时候是4种毒素同时存在的，这种情况占到了47%。也是毒素之间它有一种协同效应，虽然说都不超标，但是它这个协同效应作用下，现场会表现出一种霉菌毒素中毒的一个反应。再一个就是我们检测的霉菌毒素都是游离态的，而毒素的存在形式有2种，一个是游离态，一个是结合态。结合态的这种我们平常检测是检测不出来的，但检测不出来的这结合态的毒素进入机体内，会在各种酶的作用下释放出游离态的毒素来侵害动物，所以说也会表现出一种霉菌毒素中毒的一种现象。这是我们油脂检测的一个数据。我们检测的油脂主要是华东和华北。华东占的比例是最高的，占了66%。这3个区域主要是以禽油为主，豆油和猪油为次，主要这3种油脂。油脂的主要类型及问题分析，我们检测的总共有9种油脂，上面呢禽油、豆油和猪油这3个占的比例是最高的，其他的占的比例很少。从这个整体分析来看，油脂的不合格状况主要出现在2个方面，一个是油脂不纯，一个是总脂肪酸含量偏低。油脂不纯就是说客户说送来的是鸭油，但是检测到里面可能会含有精炼油。再就是总脂肪酸含量偏低，合格的油脂总脂肪酸含量应该是大于92的，有的检测的就非常低，甚至低到50%左右的都有。所以说这2种情况都占到了接近1半，所以说主要不合格情况就是这2种。我们隆昌集团为客户免费提供饲料成品及原料的一个检测服务，包括油脂的脂肪酸检测、酸钾、过氧化酯、盐碘，饲料和饲料原料的蛋白氨基酸、纤维再就是饲料及饲料原料的霉菌毒素检测，再就是粪便饲料当中的脂肪酸、灰分等含量的一个检测。第3个是降低生产成本，提高销售量，开源节流。降低生产成本的，我们饲料厂一天下来会做好几个品种，所以说我们优化生产流程，合理的安排订单，这也是我们节约成本的其中最重要的一个环节。在这减少生产过程中的跑冒滴漏， 生产工艺的改进，根据物种的不同，粉碎机的塞板要根据情况来适当的更换，这样也可以减少我们的生产成本。头部饲料企业单吨费用大部分都控制在2位数，而有些饲料企业单吨费用还停留在3位数。所以说，要根据这些情况，及时的检查自己企业所存在的问题，进行更正，来降低我们的一个成本。下面讲一下胆汁酸对肉鸡降本增效的一个案例。首先，第一个是胆汁酸对肉鸡脂溶性维生素吸收的一个影响。这个实验是在山东农业大学做的，2020年做的。选择双 A 肉鸡84只，随机分为3组，每组2个重复，每个重复14只鸡，主要检测肉鸡肝脏和血清中脂溶性维生素的一个含量。组别处理就对照组是基础质量，实验1组是基础质量加200毫克每公斤的乳能，实验2组是基础质量加400毫克每公斤的乳能，乳能是为30%的胆汁酸遇混剂。从表上可以看出，饲料中添加200还是400毫克每公斤的胆汁酸，肝脏和血清中脂溶性维生素的含量都得到了一个大幅的一个提升，特别是添加400克的时候，与对照组相比达到了一个显著的一个差异。结论就是，肉鸡质量中添加400毫克每公斤的乳能，可显著促进脂溶性维生素的吸收，增加脂溶性维生素在肝脏中的沉积，其中维生素 A、D 利用率提高15%到20%，维生素 E 钛的利用率提高10%到15%。第二是胆汁酸对肉鸡前期生产性能的一个影响，这个是在山东聊城的一条龙企业所做的，也是双 A 肉鸡，总共是2400只，随机分为对照组和实验组，每组12个重复，每个重复100只，公母各半。实验质量就对照组是基础质量，实验组是基础质量添加300毫克每公斤的乳能，这个乳能是20%胆汁酸遇混剂。测定指标主要是测定肉鸡的平均体重、增重、死逃率、料肉比和欧洲指数。从这个表中可以看出，21日零时，不管是公雏还是母雏，平均体重比对照组都有一个明显的一个提高，包括料肉比，母雏降低了0.05的料肉比，而公雏降低了0.04的一个料肉比。欧洲指数也有一个提高，公雏提高了23，而母雏提高了32，所以说欧洲指数提高幅度也是比较大。从这个实验可以得出，肉鸡前期日量添加300毫克每公斤乳能，可显著提高雏鸡的体重，同时降低雏鸡的料肉比和死逃率，提高欧洲效益指数。第3个案例是胆汁酸对广西三黄育肥期生产性能和知识代谢的影响。实验设计就是选用80日龄、体重900克左右的三黄小母鸡1200只，随机分为4个处理，每组3个重复，每个重复100只。实验周期，预示期是4天，实验期是35天。对照组就是基础质量，实验1组是基础质量加200毫克每公斤乳能，实验2组基础质量加350毫克每公斤乳能，实验3组是基础质量加500毫克每公斤乳能，乳能为30%的胆汁酸遇混剂。从这个数据中可以看出，加350毫克每公斤的时候，平均体重、平均末重、平均日增重和采食量都有一个明显的一个提高，都是对于对照组相比的话，都达到一个差异，显著的一个差异。这是不同胆汁酸添加水平对广西三黄 三黄基养分消耗率影响的。从表中可以看出，添加乳能对干物质、粗蛋白、粗脂肪、表观消化率都有一个明显的一个提高。350毫克的时候，应该是达到了一个最佳的一个值。从粗脂肪表观消化率看的话，效果是最显著的。这是不同胆汁酸添加水平对广西三黄鸡机体脂分布的一个影响。从表中可以看出，对三黄鸡腿肌含脂率影响是很显著的。随着胆汁酸添加量的提高，腿肌的含脂率是逐步上升，350克的时候达到一个最佳的效果。包括皮下脂肪、肌间脂肪，还有胸肌的脂肪都有一个提升。这是不同胆汁酸添加水平对广西三黄鸡肉品质的一个影响。从吸水率和滴水率可以看出，添加胆汁酸对这个胸肌和腿肌的吸水率都是提高的，对它的滴水损失都是降低的。这是不同胆汁酸添加水平对广西三黄鸡肠道消化酶指标的一个影响。添加胆汁酸以后，对乳糖酶、脂肪酶、激素敏感性脂肪酶，包括胰蛋白酶，这4种酶都有一个激活的一个作用。我们主要测了十二指肠和回肠一个酶活的一个效果。可以看出，在十二指肠对脂肪酶和激素敏感性脂肪酶的效果是最好的，而回肠中这4种酶都有一个活性提高的一个效果。结论就是在广西三黄鸡育肥期饲料中添加乳能，有助于促进广西三黄鸡生长，提高采食量，并充分利用饲料营养养分，降低广西三黄鸡复制率及增加胸肌含脂率，且明显提高腿肌脂肪含量，提升十二指肠回肠肠道消化酶的活性。这是第4个案例，就胆汁酸替代乳化剂在肉鸡中后期饲料中的一个应用。这是在山东诸城一个1条龙企业做的，就是在中后期直接替代乳化剂，这个乳化剂为溶血卵磷脂。从数据中可以看出，我们加上胆汁酸以后，它的成活率，包括出栏重还有料乳比都得到了一个改善。也就是说，从肉鸡中后期添加200毫克每公斤的乳能，替代500毫克每公斤乳化剂，可以提高养殖效益，节约一个饲料成本。第3部分就是胆汁酸在蛋鸡降本增效上的一个案例。案例1就是胆汁酸对蛋鸡生产性能的一个影响。这是选择了245日龄罗曼赫蛋鸡3000只，随机分为对照组和试验组，每组3个重复，每个重复500日鸡。对照组是基础质量，试验组是基础质量加60 ppm 胆汁酸。试验周期是30天，预试期是7天。从数据中可以看出，死逃率得到一个明显的一个改善，产蛋率得到了一个提高，而不合格蛋率得到一个明显的一个降低，由原来的2.52%降到了0.52%。不合格蛋包括破壳蛋、软壳蛋和畸形蛋，蛋重有增加趋势，不明显。料蛋比得到了一个降低。结论就是蛋鸡日粮中添加60 ppm 胆汁酸，蛋鸡死逃率降低了 2.1%， 产蛋率提高了 1.6%， 不合格蛋率降低了 2%， 料蛋比降低了 0.04。案例2就是胆汁酸对蛋鸡生产性能的影响。 这是在516日龄准备淘汰的海兰鹤蛋鸡上做的，总共是6000只，分为对照组和实验组，每个组3个重复，每个重复1000只。对照组是基础热量，实验组是基础热量加60 ppm 胆汁酸，实验周期也是30天，预试期是7天。这是在菏泽某个鸡场来做的。从表中可以看出，初始的产蛋率一个是75.15，一个是75.14，基本上是相同的。从4周平均值来看，实验组的平均值是75产蛋率，而对照组的产蛋率只有73.26，所以说得到一个明显的一个改善。料占比也得到了一个明显的改善。所以说在你淘汰蛋鸡热量中添加60 ppm 胆汁酸，可显著降低蛋鸡的一个死逃率，4周蛋鸡产蛋率提高了1.74%，料占比降低了0.25，也相当于降了9.96%。这是案例3，这是在59周龄海兰鹤蛋鸡，总共催卵是46988只，乳能的添加量是500毫克每公斤，实验周期是18天。因为这个鸡出现脂肪肝，所以说添加量相对来说会大一些。从数据中可以看出，日平均脂肪肝率得到了一个明显的一个改善，由73%降到了32%。所以说蛋鸡日粮中添加500毫克每公斤乳能，蛋鸡日粮平均死亡率降低了0.01%，日平均脂肪肝占比降低了41%，破蛋率降低了0.00%。总结就是，当前形势下，降本增效已成为饲料和养殖企业必须考虑的问题。多年实践证明，胆汁酸在降本增效方面已经得到了广泛的证实。第3，就胆汁酸可以有效提高肉鸡、蛋鸡对营养物质的利用率，改善生产性能，降低成本，提高养殖效益。谢谢大家。
Thank you so much, Mr. Janmin, for your presentation. And finally, we can have our last poll question. And I hope you were able to answer it now. So flashing into your screen, do you have fatty liver problems on your laying hen farm? Is it a yes or a no? Okay, time's up. So now we can jump into our last Q&A segment. So to everyone who has questions to Mr. Janmin, please be advised that it will be in Mandarin, but we have our translator here who can translate from English to Mandarin. So you may type it in our Q&A box that you can find below your screen. So Mr. Wang Chenmin, one of the questions is, would you please tell us how to get the pre-sample test service?
请问如何获得免费样品检测服务？
请联系我们的邮箱提出申请，或者在相应的族群或者当地的经销商业务团队进行申请。
Okay, there are several ways you can contact us via our email address. You can also scan the code to enter WhatsApp group, and you can also contact our salesman directly or our distributor, the local distributor directly for the details.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think we're going to have our last question for today. The trial is published already.
这个实验已经发表了吗？
发表了。
Yes, it has been published.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think we have no other questions for.
Yes, we have another question. This question is from the domestic customer, and the question is, 目前情况下 FCR 降0.01亿吨肉鸡饲料可以节省多少成本？ The question is, if FCR is decreased by 0.01, how much will it be saved for 1 ton feed for broiler? Yes, please.
差不多1吨肉鸡料可以节省差不多15到20块钱。
So the answer is, if FCR is decreased by 0.01, the feed cost can be saved by 15 to 20 Chinese yuan.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Wang Changmin, for joining us today in our webinar. And if you have any further questions to him, you feel free to do it by emailing to info@sdlachance.com so he can also reply to it. So finally, we are done and we are officially closing our second day webinar. Once again, on behalf of Informal Markets who organized this webinar, we would like to thank Shandong Longchang Animal Health Products Corporation Limited for hosting this insightful webinar and for inviting our speakers who generously shared their knowledge and expertise to our audience. And most especially, thank you to all our audience today who joined us since yesterday. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this session. Please wait for any email from LACHANCE Group with regard to the gift for participating in our poll questions. We do hope that you learned new things today and bring home your learnings that you can apply to your businesses and day-to-day living. And before I officially close the webinar, may I request everyone to please answer our survey form, which you can find its link in the chat box so that we can further improve our future webinars. Once again, thank you for attending and we hope to see you again. Stay safe.
Shandong Longchang Animal Health Product Company Limited is one leading grain feed additive manufacturer in China, serving more than 6,000 feed manufacturers and over 10 million farmers in husbandry industry, with solutions to reduce production costs and improve production performance. LACHANCE Group has been specialized in R&D of bioacids and other grain feed additives for more than 10 years. LACHANCE Group has one professional management team with 8 doctor, 20 master degree holders, 8 executive masters of business administration, and 20 experts with a rich experience in feed formulation and husbandry technique. LACHANCE R&D Center is equipped with the most advanced testing instruments, which are used to guarantee the product quality and provide customers with lipid and mycotoxin testing services. The R&D Center has research centers for hepatobiliary and fatty acid metabolism. In July of 2014, LACHANCE obtained new feed additive certificate from Ministry of Agriculture of China. Bioacids can improve the digestion and absorption of fat effectively. LACHANCE now owns a number of invention patents for production facility, process, and testing method of bioacids. In 2011, LACHANCE invested $7 million and established the new factory with an annual production capacity of 4,000 tons of bioacids, which can be used in 50 million tons of feed and $7 million for feed manufacturers. LACHANCE launched happiness feed extracted from Eucommia omidis to replace some antibiotics and improve antioxidant capacity of the body, which plays an important role in promoting husbandry without antibiotics. In 2018, LACHANCE launched Eucobiotics, which is a safe and green product to inhibit bacterial growth, repel parasites, and protect the health of respiratory system and intestinal tract. LACHANCE has the mission to develop the natural extractive feed additives, save production costs, and improve production performance of husbandry industry. LACHANCE products have been exported to USA, Egypt, Russia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and other countries and areas, and well received by customers from international markets. LACHANCE Group will increase the investment in scientific research and development of green, safe, and environment-friendly feed additives, and work together with customers both in China and abroad to promote the safe and healthy development of husbandry and aquaculture industry.